The sourdough starter exploded on a Tuesday, not metaphorically. Not the morning got off to a rough start. The jar of fermented dough that Felicity Harmon had been nurturing for 11 days. 11 days of precise feedings, careful temperature checks, and quiet optimism, launched its lid clean across the prep kitchen and left a splatter pattern on the industrial refrigerator that, if you squinted, looked remarkably like the state of Ohio. Felicity stood there for a moment, holding a measuring cup she no longer needed, watching a slow glob of starter slide down the stainless steel door. "Ohio," she said to no one. The refrigerator did not respond. She grabbed a rag and got to work. That was the thing about working in a professional kitchen. You cleaned your disasters immediately because someone else was always right behind you and their disaster was already on its way. Felicity Harmon was 29 years old, the sous chef at Ardent, a mid-sized farm-to-table restaurant in downtown Portland, Oregon, and the unofficial keeper of the bread program that her executive chef, Raymond Platt, took full credit for every time a food writer came around. She had been at Ardent for 4 years. She had developed 3 of the 8 dishes currently on the fall menu. She had trained 6 line cooks, 2 of whom had gone on to open their own restaurants. She made $62,000 a year and had not received a raise in 18 months. She knew all of this the way you know the weight of something you carry every day. Not consciously, not with bitterness in the forefront, just always there, in the background, like a low hum you stop noticing until the power goes out. The sourdough starter, freshly restocked, went back into its warm corner. Felicity tied her apron tighter and started on the mise en place for the afternoon shift. The dining room was closed on Monday nights, which was the only reason Felicity was still in the building when the stranger walked through the back door at 20 minutes past 9. He wasn't supposed to be there. The back entrance required a keypad code, and the code changed every month. She heard the door open, heard footsteps on the rubber mat, and looked up from the stock she was reducing. Because she always stayed late on Mondays. This was not a secret. The cleaning crew knew, the dishwasher Miguel knew, and apparently now this man knew. He was tall. He was wearing a canvas jacket over a plain gray shirt, the kind of clothes that were either very cheap or very expensive, depending on where you bought them. And he was carrying a legal pad and looking around the kitchen with the focused attention of someone doing an inspection. "Can I help you?" Felicity said, which was her polite version of "Who are you and how did you get in here?" He looked at her. His eyes were the particular shade of gray-green that photographs never capture correctly, and people try to describe at length anyway. "I'm sorry to come in this late," he said. He had a calm voice. Not practiced calm, not the kind of calm that comes from training, just calm. "I'm Fletcher. I just started in the front of house." Felicity stared at him. "No, you didn't." He blinked. "We don't have any new front of house staff." "I would know." She pointed her spoon at him with the precise authority of someone who has burned herself on a spoon and is no longer afraid of one. "Raymond would have told me. He always tells me when he hires someone new because I'm the one who has to arrange the family meal timing." Fletcher, if that was actually his name, looked down at his legal pad. He seemed to be recalibrating. "You're right," he said. "I'm sorry, I'm doing a facilities review." "I should have come during business hours." "Facilities review," she repeated. "Yes, for who?" A pause. "Not a long one, but long enough. For the ownership group." Felicity turned back to her stock and lowered the heat by a quarter. She was familiar with the ownership group. The ownership group was a collection of investors she had never met, operating behind a company called Greenfield Hospitality, which also owned 4 other restaurants across the Pacific Northwest. The ownership group sent emails. The ownership group occasionally sent inspectors. The ownership group did not, as a rule, send inspectors at 9:30 on a Monday night who came through the back door in canvas jackets. "There's coffee," she said, "if you want some. The good stuff is in the silver canister on the second shelf." He seemed surprised by this. "You're not going to kick me out?" he asked. "I thought about it," she said honestly. "But if you're lying about who you are, you'll tell me something useful eventually. And if you're telling the truth, then you probably have the code for the back door, and there's no point in arguing." She glanced at him over her shoulder. "Either way, the coffee's there." Fletcher, she decided to keep calling him that, whatever the truth was, poured himself a cup. He didn't add anything to it, which she noticed because she noticed things like that. He sat on the stool at the end of the prep counter, the one nobody used because it was slightly too high and the footrest was broken. And he opened his legal pad. "What are you making?" he asked. "Reducing veal stock. I'm testing a sauce for the winter menu. What goes with it?" "Ideally, seared duck breast, a celery root puree, and pickled cranberries." She paused. What Raymond will put on the menu is probably roasted chicken, a potato gratin, and cranberry jam from a jar. A beat. Then Fletcher said, "Does that frustrate you?" "Yes," she said without drama. "But I work here, not for myself. It's different." He wrote something on his legal pad. She couldn't see what. They stayed that way for 40 minutes. Felicity worked, Fletcher observed. He asked questions, not about the facilities, she noticed, but about the food, about her process, about why she did certain things in certain orders, why she chose the stock reduction over a pan sauce, why she'd left the herbs in whole rather than minced. She answered him the way she answered her line cooks, directly, without condescension, with the assumption that the question was genuine. At 10:15 she tasted the reduction, adjusted the seasoning, and decided it needed another hour. She wasn't willing to give it tonight. She covered it, labeled it, and slid it into the walk-in. "Same time tomorrow?" Fletcher said when she came back out. "I'm here every Monday." She pulled off her apron. "You should tell the ownership group that the ventilation hood over Station 3 needs servicing. It's been rattling for 6 weeks and Raymond keeps saying he'll put in the work order." Fletcher wrote it down. She left. The kitchen went quiet. He came back the next Monday, and the one after that. By the third Monday, Felicity had stopped being suspicious and started being something else. She couldn't quite name it yet, but it sat in her chest the same way good bread does, warm and substantial and slightly inconvenient. Fletcher asked good questions. He listened to the answers completely, the way people did before phones existed. He laughed in the right places, not the polite laughter places. He helped her carry the sheet pans to the rack one night when she had 4 of them, and he happened to be nearby. And he did it without asking first or making a show of it, which was, she thought, the correct way to help someone carry sheet pans. He told her almost nothing about himself. She noticed this, filed it, and waited. It was on the 4th Monday that the walk-in broke. Not dramatically, it didn't alarm or make a catastrophic noise. It simply stopped maintaining temperature, which Felicity discovered at 8:45 p.m. when she went in to pull the stock and found it 3 degrees warmer than it should have been. 3 degrees doesn't sound like much. In a professional kitchen, 3 degrees is the beginning of a catastrophe. She came out of the walk-in and went directly to her phone. The maintenance company's emergency line put her on hold. She hung up and called Miguel, who knew the refrigeration contractor and had the man's personal cell number saved from a previous emergency involving an ice machine and a Thursday service. Then she stood in the middle of the kitchen, looked at the contents of the walk-in in her head. 2 days of prepped mise en place, 40 pounds of butchered protein, the stocks she'd spent 3 hours on, and began making decisions. What can I do? Fletcher was there. She'd almost forgotten. "There's a reach-in cooler in the dry storage room," she said. "It's small. We need to prioritize the proteins, then the dairy, then the prepped vegetables in that order. There are Lexan containers on the bottom shelf. Clear lids, not red. We're going to move everything we can't afford to lose." He didn't ask her to repeat herself. He went to dry storage. They worked for an hour and 40 minutes. The refrigeration contractor arrived at 11 p.m. and confirmed the compressor had failed. The repair would take until morning. Everything they'd moved survived. Everything they hadn't, some prep that had already been partially broken down, she made the call to discard. Fletcher stood next to her while she made the inventory list of the losses for Raymond's morning email. "You handled that well," he said. "I've handled worse," she said. It was true. There was the kitchen fire of 2021, which she did not particularly want to think about. It's the job. Most people would have panicked. Panicking doesn't keep the duck breast safe. She hit send on the email. "Also, I did panic a little. I just did it internally, where it didn't take up any space." Fletcher looked at her for a moment. She looked back because she was not someone who looked away from things. "Who are you really?" she asked. "I told you. I'm doing a facilities review. For 6 weeks. It's a thorough review, Fletcher," she said, and something in his face shifted when she used the name, almost imperceptibly, the way a flame moves when you breathe near it. "I am standing in my kitchen at 11:30 at night after salvaging 2 days of prep from a broken refrigerator, and I have been answering your questions honestly for 6 weeks. I think you can tell me something true." He was quiet for long enough that she thought he wasn't going to. Then he said, "Fletcher is my name, Fletcher Orrin Cole. That part's true." She waited. "The review is also true, but it's not a facilities review." He set his legal pad down on the prep counter. "Greenfield Hospitality is restructuring. The ownership group is deciding which of the 5 restaurants to invest in further and which to either sell or close. I was asked to spend some time in each location, observe operations, and make a recommendation." Felicity was quiet. "That means," she said carefully, "that Ardent might close. It's a possibility. And you've been coming here on Monday nights for 6 weeks making that assessment. Yes. She looked at the walk-in. She looked at the prep counter, which she'd wiped down 3 times tonight already out of nervous habit. She looked at the shelf where her sourdough starter sat in its jar, the replacement jar, the one that had not exploded, that was doing exactly what it was supposed to do. Okay, she said. Fletcher blinked. Okay, what else would I say? She hung up her apron. You have a job to do. I have a job to do. The duck breast is safe. I'm going home. She was almost at the door when he said, For what it's worth, the food is exceptional. She stopped. The menu doesn't reflect it, he said. I've eaten here 4 times in the dining room before the Mondays. The specials, the ones that change weekly, are significantly better than the standard menu. The bread program is unlike anything else in Portland right now, and the way you run this kitchen is... He stopped. It's efficient, and it's kind. That's a rare combination. Felicity stood with her hand on the door. You ate here before you came in through the back, she said. 4 times. Did you have the duck confit special 3 Sundays ago? Yes, I made that, I know, he said. It's why I stayed. She left. But she stood outside in the October air for a full minute before she started walking, which was not something she normally did. Raymond Platt called her into his office on a Thursday. She sat in the chair across from his desk, the chair with the torn vinyl on the left armrest that had been torn since she arrived 4 years ago and would probably be torn when the restaurant closed, whenever that was, and Raymond did the thing he did when he was uncomfortable, which was to shuffle papers that did not need shuffling. I've been hearing some things, Raymond said. About an assessment, corporate assessment. He said corporate like it tasted bad. Apparently someone's been coming around after hours. He comes on Monday nights, Felicity said. When the dining room is closed, Raymond looked up. You knew? He introduced himself his first night. I assumed you knew. I did not know. Raymond's voice went tight. I am the executive chef of this restaurant. I should have been notified, Raymond. She kept her voice level. What did they tell you? He pressed his lips together. That they're considering the future of the location, that some positions may be, he waved his hand, reorganized. Felicity looked at him. Raymond Platt was not a bad man. He was a competent chef who had let himself get comfortable, who had stopped pushing a long time ago and had built a career on taking credit for other people's momentum. He was the kind of problem that was also just a person, and she had learned to hold both things at once. Have they said anything about the food? She asked. He frowned. No, not specifically. The food is good, Raymond. The bread program especially. If they're making a decision about this restaurant, the food should be part of the conversation. I'm sure they know. Have you told them? Directly? She leaned forward slightly. Have you sent anyone the actual menu development notes? Have you documented the specials program, the sourcing relationships, the supplier contracts we renegotiated last spring? Raymond shuffled his papers. I'll look into it, he said. She left his office and went back to her kitchen, which was the only place in the building where things made sense in the way she needed them to. Fletcher came on Monday. Felicity had made a decision over the weekend, the kind of decision that feels obvious once you make it and slightly terrifying in the making. She had spent Sunday afternoon writing a document. 12 pages, the bread program, the specials rotation, the sourcing relationships, 3 local farms, 2 of which she had found herself and negotiated directly, the staff retention numbers, the food cost percentages she'd managed to bring down over 18 months. Everything Raymond would not think to mention in clear language with specific numbers. She slid it across the prep counter when Fletcher came in. He looked at it, then at her. What is this? He said. The case for Ardent, she said. The case that won't be made by anyone else. He picked it up. He read in silence, which she appreciated, because she was busy with the stock, and silence in a kitchen is never uncomfortable. It just means everyone is doing what they're supposed to be doing. He read the whole thing. You negotiated the Riverbend farm contract yourself? He said. Raymond thought the price was too high. I thought the product was worth it, so I went back and worked out a volume commitment that brought the price down. We've been their primary restaurant account for 2 years now. She paused. Page 8, the bread fermentation process on page 10, 11 days for a proper starter. I've destroyed 3 starters trying to optimize the timeline, and I'm currently on attempt number 4. He turned to page 11. He read. Then he said, Felicity. She looked up. This is a thorough document, he said. It's the truth, she said, laid out clearly. He set the document down. He had that expression again, the one she'd started noticing in the 3rd week, the one that wasn't quite professional and wasn't quite personal but lived in the space between. I want to ask you something, he said, and I want you to answer honestly. which I realize is a strange request because you don't really know how to answer any other way. Ask, she said. If Ardent closes, or if the ownership structure changes significantly, what would you do? She stirred the stock, tasted it, added a pinch of salt. I don't know, she said. I've thought about it. I have enough saved for a gap year. I've been approached by 2 other restaurants in the last year, one in Seattle, one here. She paused. I've also thought about the other thing, my own place. Small, maybe 30 seats. Counter service for lunch, plated dinner on weekends. She almost laughed at herself. It's the thing I think about when the starter explodes. Does it explode often? More than you'd think. He wrote something down. She wanted to ask what, and she didn't ask because she was trying to be the person who didn't need to know everything immediately. Fletcher Orrin Cole's full name appeared in a Portland Business Journal article that a line cook named Bria showed Felicity on her phone 3 days later. The article was 8 months old. It was about the expansion of Greenfield hospitality and included a photograph of Fletcher at some kind of industry event, wearing a suit that looked like the expensive version of the canvas jacket, with a caption that identified him as the founder and CEO of Greenfield Hospitality Group, which owned not 5 restaurants but 31, across Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Northern California. Felicity read the article twice. She handed the phone back to Bria. Huh, she said. Huh, Bria said. He's been coming to our kitchen on Monday nights for weeks. Didn't you notice he seemed kind of important? I was going to say polished, but yeah. Felicity thought about the canvas jacket, the broken-footed stool he sat on every week without complaint, the way he'd moved the sheet pans without making it a gesture. He helped me move 40 pounds of protein to a reach-in cooler in dry storage, she said. Very method, said Bria. Felicity went back to her station. She thought about the article. She thought about the 12-page document she'd handed him. She thought about how she'd said the things she'd said, about the starter exploding, about 30 seats, about counter service for lunch, and how she'd said them to a man who she believed was an observer, not a decision-maker, when he was in fact the person making all of the decisions. She thought about whether she was embarrassed. She decided she wasn't. Everything she'd said was true. She didn't perform differently for people with more power, because she had figured out a long time ago that performing for people with power was a good way to end up working for who they thought you were instead of who you actually were. Monday came. You're the CEO, she said when Fletcher walked through the back door. Yes, he said. Founder, yes. 31 restaurants. He paused. 32 as of last month. We acquired a location in Bend. Congratulations. She gestured at the coffee. He poured himself a cup and sat on the broken stool like he always did. She looked at him. Were you going to tell me? I was trying to figure out when, he said. It changes things. The way people talk to me when they know. I wanted to. He stopped. I wanted to know what you were actually like. And I think you're exactly what the document suggests, he said. Which is someone who has built something significant inside a structure that has consistently failed to recognize it. Felicity was quiet for a moment. Is that a business assessment? She said. Partly. What's the other part? He looked at her steadily. The other part is that I have eaten in a great many restaurants and I have met a great many chefs and I have never sat on a broken stool in a closed kitchen on a Monday night for 6 weeks anywhere before. Felicity picked up her spoon, put it down again. This was a new experience. She did not frequently need to put things down for no physical reason. The ventilation hood over Station 3, she said, gets fixed this week. I called it in after the first Monday. The prep schedule. I submitted a proposal to Raymond 6 months ago to shift protein prep to midweek instead of Monday, which would free up Tuesday morning lead time. I read it in the back office files. It's a sound proposal. Raymond didn't implement it because the change would require him to adjust his schedule. I know, she said. I knew that when I submitted it. Fletcher set his legal pad aside, which he had never done before. I want to offer you something, he said, and I want to be transparent about all of it, because I recognize there are multiple things in play here, and I don't want any of them to be confused with each other. He folded his hands on the counter. Greenfield is going to restructure Ardent. Raymond will be offered a transition package. He's been here 11 years. It'll be fair. The restaurant stays open. We're investing in it, not closing it. He paused. I want you to run it. Executive chef, full creative authority over the menu, the bread program, the sourcing relationships. Compensation that reflects what you've actually built here. She was very still. And separately, he said, and his voice was slightly different now, careful in a way that was not professional. I would like, at some point, if you're open to it, to eat dinner at a restaurant that is not one I own with you. Not as an assessment. The kitchen was quiet. The starter sat in its corner, fermenting away, doing exactly what it was supposed to do. "The 30-seat place," she said. "What about it? If I run Ardent, full authority, my menu, I want a clause in the contract. 3 years from now, if I want to open my own restaurant, Greenfield doesn't stand in the way. No non-compete that covers independent ownership." He looked at her for a long moment. "You're negotiating your exit before you've agreed to start." "I negotiated a farm contract before Raymond thought the price was fair," she said. "I plan ahead." Something happened in his face then. Not a smile exactly, but the thing that comes before one. The thing that means the smile is real. "I'll have legal draft it that way," he said. "Then yes," she said to Ardent. "A beat." "And the dinner," she said. "Also yes." "But I choose the restaurant, naturally," he said. She turned back to her stock. He picked up his coffee. The stainless steel refrigerator gleamed under the kitchen lights, Ohio free and fully operational, and outside the window the October night was doing what October nights in Portland do, going dark and damp and quietly beautiful, the way things do when they've finally settled into what they were always meant to be. The restructuring was announced on a Wednesday, which was the correct day for bureaucratic news. Not a Monday, when the kitchen was closed and feelings had nowhere to go, and not a Friday, when people would spend the weekend catastrophizing. Raymond took the package. He was, to his credit, gracious about it, in the tired way of someone who has known something was coming for longer than they've admitted. Bria cried a little in the walk-in, which Felicity pretended not to notice because the walk-in had always been the place where people went to feel things privately, and that was a kitchen tradition worth respecting. The new menu launched in January. It had 12 items. The sourdough, properly fermented, properly baked. Felicity's starter, which had now survived 4 months without incident, came with cultured butter from the Riverbend Farm dairy operation, which Felicity had suggested to the Riverbend family as a logical expansion 18 months ago, and which they had cautiously tried and which had turned out to be a very good idea. A food writer from the Oregonian came in February. She wrote 6 paragraphs about the bread. Felicity read the review at 6 in the morning, standing in her kitchen, still in her pajamas, holding coffee. She read it twice. She took a picture of it and sent it to her mother in Sacramento, who texted back a string of heart emojis that took up an entire screen. Fletcher sent a text that said only, "Told you," she sent back. The starter helped. He sent, "Tell the starter I said thank you." She looked at that for a moment, at the easy warmth of it, the specific warmth of someone who had sat on a broken stool for 6 Mondays and listened to her talk about fermentation schedules and ventilation hoods and 30-seat dreams, and had said yes to all of it. Not as a concession, but as a response to something he'd actually heard. She texted back, "It says you're welcome. It also says you should fix the stool." The stool was fixed the following week. She came in on Monday morning and found it at the end of the prep counter, same position but level, the footrest solid and even, and a small card tucked under the leg that said, "For the long conversations." The dinner happened on a Saturday in March, at a 16-seat Japanese restaurant in northeast Portland that Felicity had been trying to get a reservation at for 7 months. She had finally gotten one by calling at exactly 8 a.m. on a Tuesday, which was when they released tables, and waiting on hold for 19 minutes while standing in the Ardent Prep kitchen in her chef's coat, which she did not take off because she was not going to miss this reservation for a wardrobe change. Fletcher arrived first. He was wearing the expensive version of the canvas jacket again, which she now understood was just how he dressed, not a disguise. They ate for 3 hours. The food was extraordinary. She told him exactly why, at length, in specific technical language, and he listened the way he always listened, which was completely. He told her about the first restaurant he'd opened, at 26, in a strip mall in Eugene, which had failed within 18 months. He told her what he'd learned from it. He was specific and unsentimental about the failure, which was how she knew it had mattered. She told him about the kitchen fire of 2021. He did not say anything for a moment after she finished, and then he said, "How long before you could go back in?" 4 days, she said. "I took 4 days and then I went back in. 4 days is not a long time." "No," she said, "but I needed the kitchen back more than I needed the 4 days." He nodded. She thought he understood. The 30-seat restaurant opened 2.5 years later, which was 6 months ahead of the 3-year clause, because Felicity Harmon was that kind of person. It was in a converted Victorian on Burnside, with a counter for lunch and 8 tables for dinner, and the menu changed every 3 weeks because that was how she wanted to work, and she was finally in a position where that was her decision to make. The bread program had its own small corner of the counter, where the starter, the original, the survivor, sat in its jar between services. A regular named Claudette, who came every Thursday for the open-faced tartine, once asked Felicity why she kept the starter out where customers could see it. "Because it took me a long time to get it right," Felicity said. "I like to remember that." Claudette considered this. "What do you call it? The starter?" "Yes." Felicity looked at the jar. It was doing what it did, quietly and persistently, and with no regard for whether anyone was watching. "I don't call it anything," she said. "It doesn't need a name. It just needs to be fed." Fletcher came for lunch on Thursdays when his schedule allowed, which was most Thursdays, which Claudette had noticed and approved of, in the specific way that regular customers approve of things that make the chef smile between the counter and the kitchen. The stool at the end of the prep counter, the counter that curved around the open kitchen, where you could sit and watch everything, was his, in the unspoken way that things become someone's when they show up for them consistently, without ceremony, without making it a performance, simply because they want to be there. He always got the bread first. He always ate it without adding anything to it, she always noticed.